Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to New Zealand once again for the first time in what feels like a very long while. I think it's maybe been over 2 years since I last reviewed a Kiwi beer for you here on the channel, and there's no reason for that other than the beers have been a little bit hard to come across from New Zealand in Europe over the last little while. Not sure of the particular reason, because they used to be fairly easy to get actually, but they are obviously a little bit more accessible here in Hong Kong, which is great. And there's a number of new breweries which I do need to explore, so you can look forward to a few more Kiwi reviews over the next wee while. But anyway, the beer that we're going to have a look at today comes from a brewery that I've never tried anything from before. These guys are another relatively new addition to the local beer scene. They're from a city that is very, very well known for its craft beer, of course, and the beer itself is supposed to be very nice. A lot of people have told me this one's pretty good. It's a style that's very popular at the moment. One that this brewery apparently didn't start brewing until a little bit later on in their, or more recently in their brewing career actually. So I have to say I'm very curious to see what this one's going to have in store for us. Always nice to introduce new Kiwi brewers to you here on the channel as well. So let's crack on and see what this one has in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review. And as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Wellington, the New Zealand capital. We're going to go to Miramar, which is out to the east of the city, and we're going to have a look at my first beer from Double Vision Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called the Departed. It comes in at 9% ABV, and this one is a New England Hazy Imperial Triple, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, this is one that I picked up at Wine Rack here in Hong Kong, which is a kind of chain of stores. There's maybe about 5 or 6 of them across the whole territory, if you like. But yeah, they had a couple of beers from Double Vision, and I saw on one of the WhatsApp groups that people were recommending this one. So I thought, why not? Let's have a look at it. So yeah, my first encounter with Double Vision Brewing Company from Miramar by Wellington in New Zealand. Let's crack on then. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Double Vision Brewing Company. Very first time I'm encountering these guys, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the New Zealand Kiwi playlist, whatever you want to call it. And that will hopefully be getting added to a little bit more regularly over the next wee while, because like I say, these beers are more accessible here in Hong Kong, which is awesome. But do check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very, very interesting things on the channel these days. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Double Vision Brewing. So, as I've mentioned to you already, Double Vision Brewing are based in Wellington, the New Zealand capital, which is in the kind of southeastern bit of the North Island, if I remember correctly, and the company was founded back in 2016 by 4 friends. This is Mario Lance, Harry Henriksen, Warren Drahota, and Evan Flonte. So Warren has a background in graphic design, while both Harry and Evan worked extensively with product design, but apparently the 4 friends met while working for a company called Phil and Ted's, which designed baby gear, and all of the guys are from New Zealand except Warren, who is from Fort Collins in Colorado, which is incidentally a very, very good beer city, so go and check it out if you get the chance. Somewhere I need to go again. But Mario apparently is the beer geek of the company, and he homebrewed in his garage for a number of years, and the guys would basically go there and hang out, help him out with the brewing when he needed, and they would barbecue sausages and things like that together. Apparently they spent many a cold winter night in Mario's garage helping him brew beer. But the company started out initially as a part-time venture, and they were doing some gypsy brewing and contract brewing at different places. Apparently they did this at Te Aro and North End Brewing in the local area, but after a while they decided to take the brewery as a full-time venture, so this changed in about mid-2019. But the brewery itself can be found in the Miramar area out to the east of the city, and they've gradually grown this facility over the years. When they were ready to expand, they actually found themselves landlocked by other tenants, but they found a suitable property just across the way, and apparently there was quite a few things to kind of overcome here because there was 2 different landlords and things like this. But to make it work, they actually had to build an underground beer pipe, which cost them a lot more than expected because of what they call food safe welding. So yeah, this cost them a lot more than they thought. But if you actually look at the Google Maps thing of where the brewery is, you can see where they've dug the trench between the 2 buildings, which is kind of cool actually. So yeah, this brewery is located in 2 separate premises, and there's a pipe that pipes the beer from one side into the other. So yeah, they've expanded their fermentation capacity quite considerably over the years. But they do have an on-site tap room which has 17 different taps serving all their different beers. This is open from Wednesday to Sunday every week, and as of April 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 160 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. And if you go and look through the list, there are a variety of different styles listed there. So yeah, definitely worth going down to the tap room and having a wee look, and that is something that I will try my best to do when I find myself in Wellington, hopefully in the next couple of years. That's a trip that I really do want to make actually. Wellington has been on my list for quite some time, as well as exploring the rest of New Zealand. I only saw a little bit of the North Island actually, but yeah, do want to explore the whole place. So yeah, that's everything I can tell you about Double Vision Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and have a little look at the beer itself. So I'll just like to have a wee look at the artwork on this one. I have to say, I do find this quite funny because I come from an Air Force family. The ejector seats, my uncle has told me about his ejector seat training, which is quite funny. But you can see, yeah, the beer kegs are providing the propulsion for the pilot there, which I do quite like. You can see on the side here, Double Vision Brewing, which looks pretty nice. Plain black top on the can there. This one I think is a 440 milliliter, is it? Or is it a 473, an American pint? Doesn't actually say. I think it's more likely to be I think this one is a 440 rather than a 473. But yeah, as I say, this is one that I picked up at Wine Rack here in Hong Kong. They had this one both in the Wan Chai and the Sai Ying Pun shops. But as I say, 9% New England Hazy, Imperial Triple, whatever you want to call it, IPA. The hops in this one are Riwaka, Azaka and El Dorado. Riwaka, of course, is a kiwi hop, quite low alpha acid actually, about 6% alpha acid. It's known to give you quite a little bit of tropical fruit, passion fruit, pineapple, and it has quite a little bit of lemony character from what I remember as well. I first discovered Riwaka in New Zealand when I was there in 2015, but the other 2 hops are of course American. Azaka's about 14% alpha acid, gives you quite a bright mandarin-y note and also quite a little bit of pineapple as well from what I remember. And then El Dorado is the American hop, about 12% alpha acid I think, and that gives you quite a little bit of like passion fruit and pineapple and things from what I remember too. So I do expect quite a lot of pineapple in this particular hazy IPA, to be honest with you, just when we talk about the hops. But yeah, artwork on this one's very nice. We've talked about the hops. Let's get this guy out into the glass and see how we get on then. This one, the Departed 9% New England Hazy Imperial Triple, whatever you want to call it, IPA. Been looking forward to this one since I bought it, and as I say, very cool to return to New Zealand for the first time in what seems like a good wee while. Let's just see if we've got any sediment down the bottom there. Yeah, when it pours, it certainly doesn't look like the haziest of hazy IPAs. It looks more like a kind of natural haze sort of thing. So yeah. Anyway, so you can see before the head disappears with this one, I think we've got about 80% of the beer out into the glass there, but you can see this beer's poured with quite a soapy sort of, you can see that there, quite a soapy yeah, kind of cream coloured head there. You can see quite bumpy and soapy in its bubbly character. You can see there's a little bit of the hazy character, the head is fading away to be just a little foamy layer in the middle of the glass there. But yeah, other than that, it looks pretty damn good actually, this one. The head of this one just wasn't quite what I was expecting. I'm a little bit more soapy, but that is fading away and you've just got that nice ring around the edge of the glass. Now, when it comes to the appearance of this beer, it certainly does look like more what I would call an American IPA. Now, West Coast IPAs, of course, are the more bitter ones from California. A lot of early edition hopping to give you that big bitterness, and they tend to use more barley malt in their malt base, pretty much exclusively barley malt, but it's not unheard of to use a little bit of wheat or a little bit of oat, whereas New England IPAs are of course the hazy ones, and they get their haziness because of the wheat and the oat, and they tend to rely on late addition and dry hopping, more juicy, less kind of bitterness and things like that. But what I've noticed over the years is that this kind of generic American IPA style has evolved, and basically it's a beer that's kind of somewhere in between, if you like. And this beer certainly looks like an American IPA. It's got a bit of natural haze to it, but we'll just need to see how we go. As long as it's a good IPA, to be honest, who cares? That's the main thing. Yeah, me. So you can see that this one's got a lovely kind of rich, deep yellow colour to it. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar is caramelised, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging you do or adjuncts that you put in will affect the colour of the beer as well. But you don't often have to care about that when it comes to IPAs. Good little bit of carbonation visible on this one, a steady stream going up toward the surface of liquid there, and you could feel that the can on this one was a little bit harder, so maybe this beer is just a little bit older, and we'll see a bit about that in the taste, but quite often the big ones like this can hold up pretty well. Anyway, I don't think we need to say anything else about the appearance of this one, other than that it looks a little bit more like a kind of generic American IPA, rather than being completely hazy, if you like. It's certainly not the haziest or soupiest and gloopiest of New England IPAs that I've seen. But anyway, that's enough about the appearance. Let's go on and have a wee look at the aroma then. Very curious about this. Ah, yeah, right. Yeah, I'm going to say with this one, it's interesting because it does smell a bit more West Coasty than New England, to be quite honest with you. There's quite a wee bit of sweetness in here rather than creaminess, and there's quite a wee bit of yeasty character, I think, coming out of this one as well, which is interesting. It actually reminds me a little bit of that more kind of yeasty character that you get from the likes of Heady Topper, and what's the other one? I forget the name of the other one from Alchemist Brewing. That's gone right out of my head. But yeah, it has a little bit more, this beer has a bit more of that kind of yeasty, like grainy type character out of it, I would say. Yeah, so big kind of bright green component, quite oily fruity character as well. So to me, this one actually leans a little bit more toward a kind of West Coast IPA. It's a bit more, it's kind of almost in the middle, if you like, of the spectrum, but leaning slightly more toward the West Coast with the brighter, with the kind of, it has got a wee bit of like almost dankness to it, but still very bright green component. The malt base has a bit of that graininess. There's stuff kind of coming all over the place with this one. You've got a wee bit more yeastiness, as you'd expect from New England, the brighter green component in there as well. The oily fruit and the bit of sweetness is a bit more West Coasty in character. So yeah, we shouldn't put the beer into these categories, to be honest with you. We should judge it on its own merits. But yeah, the aroma of this one is quite interesting, I would say. But yeah, let's just break it down and describe it a bit more in depth rather than focusing on the styles. So, the backbone of the beer, you do get a nice little bit of that kind of fresh, sort of hedgehog, bread crusty type character coming out of this beer. You can smell that that's the backbone. There is a little touch of woodiness in there. You have got nice little elements of Jacob's cream cracker and stuff like that, and you have a wee bit of a more kind of wholemeal, brown bready character coming out of this one as well. So yeah, the way that all of that just kind of pieces together in this one, I think is really quite interesting. So that gets a thumbs up from me. So yeah, brown bread, bit of white bread in there as well. You can smell that slightly sweeter white bread in this one. And at the back of the nose, you can certainly smell there is a wee bit of that wheaty bitiness to this one. Yeah, I think there's a bit of wheaty bitiness there in the back of the nose. You can kind of smell that as well. But you have to be careful because different wheats from different parts of the world taste a bit different. And you know, New Zealand, you can quite obviously grow wheat there as well. And I'm not overly familiar with New Zealand wheat, although it does just say on the can here, it only mentions malted barley. It doesn't say malted oats or malted wheat, so it could be only a barley malt beer, this one. But yeah, that wouldn't surprise me actually, going from the aroma. But yeah, I think there is a little bit of a wheaty bitiness in the top of the nose, and it does have a little bit of smoothness to it, like almost a little touch of creaminess. So I'm hesitating to say that there is oat and wheat in this one. I think this could well just be an unfiltered barley malt base that's in here. It could just be an unfiltered barley malt IPA, this one. But it's a bit strange, you know, if you call a beer a hazy triple IPA these days, you do expect the big sort of soupy, gloopy, New England, oaty, wheaty, creamy sort of thing. So yeah, you do get an almost little, there is like an almost sort of rye bready type character coming out of this one. So you've got a bit of rye bread, a bit of a kind of rusticy type thing as well. And then yeah, you've got as I say, you've got a good little bit of kind of sweetness coming out of this one as well. There is a little bit of that Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy type note, a little bit of an almost biscuity character to the beer. But the more that I smell of this, the more I become convinced that it's only barley malt in this one. The wheaty characters that I was picking up sort of take a bit of a backseat, and I don't get much in the way of oaty creaminess. I think it'd be a lot more distinctive actually with the oaty creaminess, to be honest with you. So yeah, that's worth bearing in mind with this particular beer. Yeah, interesting stuff for sure. Definitely interesting stuff from that perspective. But I think we've covered the malty and yeasty, pardon me, side of this beer. Let's look at the hoppy side of things then. So for me, the backbone of the beer, on the hoppy side of things, there's a little touch of earthiness to this one, but the green component is very, very bright actually. So when it comes to IPAs, you have three different types of hoppings you can do. You can do early addition hopping, you can do late addition hopping, or dry hopping. Early addition hopping is going to be within the first hour of your wort boil. That gives you mainly the bitterness and the deep dank flavours. Late addition hopping is going to give you a little bit of bitterness, but mainly kind of a brighter, more sort of floral green component there, as well as some of the fruits. Then dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete, that is going to give you pretty much all flavour and aroma, so the bright fruity notes and the kind of more zesty grassy sort of thing, I would say. So yeah, this beer smells as if it's using mainly late addition and dry hopping, but a little bit of early addition hopping in this one wouldn't surprise me, because there is that wee bit of depth to this one. But yeah, on the green component, there's a little bit of earthiness, a little bit of herbal character, but mainly quite a bright floral note in there, and some zesty grassy character as well, which I think is going to be the Rewaka out of the hops in here. So yeah, I'd say yeah, I think most likely it's Rewaka that's going to give you that, to be honest with you. But on the fruity side of things, this beer is quite oily. As I say, the oily character that comes out of this one, I think is really quite nice. So for me, the oily fruity character that comes out of the beer, I would say is the oily fruity character in this beer. It's got quite a little bit of that lemony zesty character, which I was expecting from the Rewaka. That was something that came out of the beer like right away. But yeah, you do get a little bit of a more, you do have a bit of that oily passion fruit in there. I wouldn't say it's quite as sharp as peach, but certainly I'm getting softer apricots underneath, quite a little bit of pineapple as I was expecting, and there is like a wee bit of an orangey character to this one too. Yeah, all in all, this is quite an interesting, the aroma of this beer is quite interesting. Certainly comes across as more of an American IPA than being a sort of all-out hazy IPA. So yeah, interesting stuff actually. Interesting stuff, this one, from the aroma perspective. Good fruity notes coming out of it as well. But as I always say, take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I think it is about time that we have a taste of this one and see how we get on. So yeah, this is the Departed, a 9% hazy triple IPA as they're calling it, from Double Vision Brewing. in Miramar, Wellington, New Zealand. Let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål, cheers, or as I'm told they say in New Zealand, sure. Yeah. I'm going to say straight away, what I was saying about this beer being like a sort of more generic American IPA rather than being sort of West Coast or New England, I think that's right in this one. The main question should always be though, is it a nice beer? And I would say, yeah, this one is, but definitely it's not New England hazy and it's not West Coast California. It's kind of somewhere in the middle. We are talking about a New Zealand IPA as well, and some people list a New Zealand IPA as being separate, but you know, for me in New Zealand you get hazy IPAs and you also get the West Coast IPAs. They just use the New Zealand hops. If you're watching in New Zealand, of course, let me know your opinion on that in the comment section below. I'd be curious to hear. But yeah, this one is definitely somewhere in the middle of your hazy and yeah, it's definitely somewhere in the middle of your New England and West Coast IPAs. It is a nice, quite light and drinkable IPA. It covers its alcohol pretty well. It's actually dangerously drinkable for a 9%er, and I like it. That's the main thing. So it's actually a little bit more mild mannered in its flavour than you might have thought from the aroma. I thought this one was going to be quite bitey in terms of its green component and stuff like that, and a little bit more, you know, sort of citrusy leaning, but it's actually very mellow. It's quite tropical leaning and things, I would say, as well. Yeah, it's a nicely done beer, this one. So it gives a good first impression of Double Vision Brewing. So let's break the flavour of this beer down then and describe it a wee bit more in depth. Middle third of your palate. The backbone of the beer, you have this lovely kind of fresh white bready bread crust in there. You very often get that in these beers. As you move further forward on that middle third of your tongue, you get a little bit of woodiness in the base. There's a layer of sort of Jacob's cream cracker and things like that too. But yeah, the way it all goes together, I think, is really, really nice. So, for me, the fruity side of this beer is quite it's quite nice as well, but the malty side of things, I think, is what lingers into the aftertaste. So yeah, above the sort of crackery layer, you get a layer of like a kind of sweeter wholemeal brown bread coming out of this one. Then you have a layer of a lighter kind of still quite sweet white bread coming out of the beer too, which I do enjoy. But yeah, the way that all of this kind of pieces together in that regard is quite nice. You've got that sweet brown bread layer, the white bready layer, and I think just going from the flavour of this one, there could be a little bit of wheat in this. There could be a little bit of oat as well, but I'm kind of doubting that. It feels like this beer is more, it really is more leaning toward the barley malt rather than anything else. If there is wheat and oat in this, it's quite mild, if you would say. I don't think it's in the same proportions as you get in a full New England hazy, this one. And that's the reason why I would say this beer is more American IPA than New England or West Coast. But we're going to leave that now. We've spoken about that quite a bit with this one. Anyway, so above the kind of white bready layer, you can feel there is a slightly more dense bready layer in there, and it's got a little bit of bite toward the back of that, pardon me, that middle third of your tongue, and that's what makes me think maybe there is a wee bit of wheat in this one, that little bit of bite. But above that, you know, you can feel down the middle line of your palate, it does have this very slightly kind of porridgey character to it, and that makes me think there might be a little touch of oat in this one. I don't know what the rules are in New Zealand if you've got to list, you know, barley, wheat and oats or whatever, because it's not in the can here. In Sweden it usually would be. But yeah, in the dead centre of your palate, you do get a little bit of that kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing coming out of the beer, and a wee bit of biscuit as you move out towards the extremities of the palate. But yeah, all in all, really, really quite nice. But yeah, I do like how that malty side of the beer goes together. I think we've covered the middle third of the palate at this point. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate, then you can feel that little bit of bready build up in there. You've got the nice kind of slightly drier sweet brown bread in the base, the white bread on top, and what I suspect is a very slight touch of wheat there in there as well. But remember, sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more kind of dry and bitter flavours come out further back. So the back third of your palate is often going to give you very similar flavours to the middle third, just at different intensities. So the back third of your palate, you can feel the bread crusty character in there, and it has the bread crusty character is that little bit drier. You've got a wee bit of cracker above that. Then you've got the brown bready layer, which feels a little bit lighter and more airy. Then the white bready layer, which feels a little bit lighter and more airy. And then above that, you have a wee bit of what I would describe as more kind of wheaty bitiness. Actually, I do suspect there's a little touch of wheat in this beer, but I think it could be either way. I'm not 100% sure. But if there is wheat in there, the New Zealand wheat's actually a little bit drier and quite smooth, I would say. European wheat's a bit more bitey, American wheat is a bit smoother. New Zealand, I'm sure, is a little bit different too, different soil and water profiles and stuff. But anyway, above all of that, on the back third of the palate, you get the yeasty side of the beer. So in the dead centre of your palate, you have, in the dead centre of that yeasty character, you've got a bit more of like a kind of brown rye bready sort of character in there, and around that it's a little bit more like a kind of rusticy wholemeal brown bread, and then you've got a more kind of crackery bread crusty character around that, and all of that sits on top of the back third of your palate for sure. So definitely you can feel the back third of your palate, the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, I think that's the malty and yeasty side of this beer covered. Let's have a wee look at the hoppy side of things then, which should be the focus when we're talking about an IPA. So yeah, green component in this is quite nice, and it has a wee bit of dankness and stuff to it, but mainly it feels like it's more late addition than dry hopping, to be honest. Back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, it's got that little touch of herbal character, and as you push toward the front corners of your palate, it's a little bit more sort of floral, if you like, and round the front curve of the tongue, it's a wee bit lighter and more grassy, I would say. So yeah. Yeah, so the grassy side of the beer has a wee bit of zestiness to it, but it's quite soft in a sense. As I say, I suspect mainly late addition and dry hopping with this beer. But let's focus on that front third of your palate and those actual fruity flavours. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of bready build up in there. You can feel the base of that front third of your the base of that build up there is more kind of brown bread. The white bread sits above it, little touch of wheatiness there, but the base of that front third of your palate is definitely more, the kind of fresh brown bready bread crust, the kind of sweeter, denser brown bread, the white bready layer. Then you've got that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters kind of just roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, I like that about this one. Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff with this one. So yeah, the fruity side of the beer is kind of, it's actually quite soft and quite juicy in a sense. So at the back of that front third of your palate, there's a lot of passion fruit there. Maybe it has a very slight peachy sharpness to it. But yeah, the passion fruit from the El Dorado and the Ruaka is quite obviously there. As you move further forward from that, it sort of mellows out and becomes more kind of apricot-y. I don't think there's too much mango to this one. There's maybe a very slight note, but yeah, a lot of passion fruit, soft kind of apricot in there, and yeah, soft kind of apricot for sure. I do get quite a wee bit of juicy pineapple out of this one, but then when you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, it's more along the lines of, it has quite a bit of orangey character to it, you know, that tangerine orangey note, and that's going to come from the Azaka in this one. The pineapple is going to come from Riwaka. It will actually come from all three hops. It'll come from the Riwaka, the Azaka, and the El Dorado. You're going to get it from all three, but you can feel just right behind the kind of front tip of the tongue, there is a wee bit of that sort of zesty, lemony character, and that's the Riwaka that's going to give you that actually. So yeah, interesting, but the fruity side of this beer is quite interesting, quite soft and tropical, but definitely the fruity notes are more kind of west coasty in nature actually. So it is definitely fair to say this is more of a kind of American IPA that is somewhere in the middle of the spectrum, but it leans a bit more toward that west coasty side of things. It's maybe about 70% west coast, 30% New England hazy, so I'm not sure. It's a good beer, that's the main thing, but I think the marketing this one as a hazy triple IPA maybe isn't the best thing. I think that's definitely fair to say. But it is a good beer, that's the main point. Yeah, I think we've said everything we need to about the flavour. Let's round off the review with a wee look at the mouthfeel. You know, the thing about this beer is it actually drinks like a single IPA, to be honest with you. It's very, very light in its mouthfeel. It covers its alcohol very, very, very well. So for me, this beer is mid-bodied, right in the middle of the spectrum. Carbonation is actually quite smooth. It's very clean, actually. You can feel the quality of the New Zealand water in there. So yeah, very clean, very light, kind of easy drinking beer. For 9%, that's dangerous. IBU-wise, I think this one's about 40 or 50 IBU. I think I don't know how old we're drinking this one. Does it say here on the can? Best before the 13th of the 5th, 2025. So I think this is actually fairly fresh, to be honest with you, if it's saying that, because usually you would put a year on an IPA. So yeah, I think we're getting this one fairly fresh, to be honest with you. But yeah, 40, maybe 50 IBUs at a push. The malt, as you said, has a bit of dryness underneath, smoothness in the middle, and very slight sweetness on top. There's not a lot of sweetness to this, to be honest. Then you've got those nice kind of wet, juicy, fruity characters. Quite tropical leaning, but there is a wee bit of citrus more into the aftertaste as well. But all in all, interesting beer, this one. And definitely cool to introduce another Kiwi brewery to you here on Rampant Lion Reviews. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This was the Departed triple IPA at 9% ABV from Double Vision Brewing in Miramar, Wellington in New Zealand. Until the next time, thank you for watching my beer reviews, and please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Double Vision Brewing as well. Do give me some other Kiwi brewery recommendations, and hopefully we can get a hold of some of those. But check out my social media, check out their social media, and I will see you guys again in another review very, very shortly. Till the next time, slàinte, skål, and cheers.